welcome to the Committed Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Jody, and each week we're going to be diving in deep, covering all things that help you step up your game, master your mindset, and help you commit to creating the life you desire. So if you're ready for that, let's get started. All right, you guys, welcome back to our very first episode of the Committed Lifestyle in an interview style. I'm super excited for this. I have one of my dear friends on here who is going to be talking to you guys about some really cool stuff that you can utilize immediately. My friend, Mr. Kenyon Salo. We've known each other for a long time. I can't wait for you guys to hear about him. You're going to absolutely love him, but he is a successful public speaker and motivational speaker and has been on thousands of stages in front of thousands of people. And so I am beyond humbled for you guys to talk to him or hear from him, I should say, because I get to do the talking. Kenyon, how are you?
I'm super excited. Thanks for having me on, Jody. This is pretty phenomenal. This is one of the true pleasures to be the first on your new podcast. So I don't take that lightly. This is having the pole position is a pretty number one spot, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's crack into your journey, though. I mean, I know a lot of it, but our listeners, they don't know anything about you. So I really want them to really hear about where you were, to what brought you into this, this amazing world of speaking, how you found yourself there.
Absolutely. Really, it's an amalgamation of my entire life. As a kid, I was all about adventures, how far I could jump my BMX bike, ride the skateboard down the hill. And then eventually that transferred into skateboarding on a regular basis, then snowboarding, then pro snowboarding, that transferred into skydiving and base jumping, and then also getting to jump into the Denver Broncos stadium on Team Thunderstorm for the Denver Broncos. It's an amazing journey. So really, what was it all about for me? It was always challenging myself on the adventure side, or challenging myself in ways, whether it was in business or in life, and different types of scenarios. But everything that I did throughout my whole life, I always wanted to teach others. Take an example of how when we used to go swimming at the summer swimming hole when I lived on the East Coast, and there was a train bridge there. It was called the Trestle. And we would walk the train tracks for about an hour to get there, and then eventually get there and spend the whole day jumping into this river. And the middle spot to jump from was about 35 feet. And it was kind of a rite of passage. Just about every kid in this small high school would go there during the summertime at some point and jump off, but not everybody was ready to jump off. And so one of the things that I really enjoyed was helping people do that process. Like, they would stand there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. Sometimes people would come back multiple days before they were ready to make this leap. And I would show them by doing it, but I'd also help them by explaining the process of what you need to do and how to do it and get over those fears. So there was always this little bit of coaching side from me. It was, hey, I can do it. I'll show you how to do it, but let me help you through the process. And then in ninth grade, right around that same time, I started to learn about public speaking from my English teacher. And she taught me a great deal. She taught the whole class, of course, and did a whole semester on public speaking. And I learned a lot of little things that I still use to this day. Fast forward all the way to where I'm now, there was about maybe at the beginning of the early 2000s, I started really resonating with the likes of like Tony Robbins and guys like that, and saying, I'd love to be on stage one day, but I didn't have the message. And then it wasn't until I found my mentor, and then in the mid 2012, 2014, right around there, I started to find the message, the bucket list life, and then designed it with create more, share more, and live more. And then that was when my speaking really took off, right around 2015 and onwards, up until today in present times, where now I went from speaking on stages for, some high school kids all the way to now some of the crown jewel events, like being in Sydney, Australia, for $1 Million Roundtable and opening up their event with 8,000 people on the stage. So it's been quite a journey.
Wow. I mean, I I'd give you a lot of rounds of applause right now if I could. That's amazing, everything that you said. But I love mostly is how when you were younger, you already had this servant heart where you wanted to coach and teach people and help guide them. And I think that is something that is so special. And I think a big reason why you are the person you are today and have touched so many lives is because, you had it in you at this young age to really help people, guide them down a path where it wasn't you doing it. It was like, here, let me show you. It's so amazing. And so, well done. And I just can't even imagine the amount of lives that you have touched in the process. So now what you do is you speak on massive stages. And what is it that you focus on?
So as I mentioned, the bucket list life was something that I came up with. And it really was call it a mini movement locally where friends and family were getting together, and we realized that we just wanted to live life, but we wanted to do it in ways where, going back to those younger years, where if there was a way that we could help others also. So we started focusing on some key areas. The first was create more experiences, which was basically saying yes to life. And that's what I teach from the stage all the time. Just say yes. And when you say yes and you let the how figure itself out later, everything seems to work out. And so we started saying yes to things like, hey, guess what, guys? We're going to go do this today. And everybody's like, yeah, we're going to go indoor skydiving, or we're going to go to the Lantern Festival and let the lanterns up in the air, or even just go to the park or different things like that, or just get together, have a barbecue. We just started saying yes to all kinds of things. And then the second part, which is share more stories. And share more stories is about connecting. That's about friends and family. That's about connecting with others. And we just always got together on a regular basis, and we started to share those stories, and you learn about each other, and they hear stories and then they share their own, and that's that bond that really starts to build. And then we also wanted to make sure that we always gave back, and we figured out different ways to give back. And an example of one of them was where my friend Hallie said that she wanted to see superheroes on the outside of the children's hospital. And I said yes, and I didn't know anybody at the time. I didn't know anybody at the children's hospital along those lines, but all of a sudden the door opened and there was someone, and there was an email, and that email led to another email. And then over the course of 6 months, 60 days, 60 people and 60 emails later, we made it happen. And on top of the helipad of the Denver Children's Hospital, and the Aurora SWAT team was dressed as superheroes, and they rappelled down the side of the children's hospital. And for those kids inside, they got to see their favorite superheroes outside the windows and things like that. And it was all over national news, and the video is something that I still use in my presentation to this day about helping others first. And it was really, really powerful. And it was something that I realized that, again, even though when I was helping others as a kid, and some of it was about ego, like, hey, look what I can do, but I still wanted to help others. But to see it all come together later on in life and have it all really just become this message that I speak from the stage, that if you do those things, if you create more experiences and you share more stories and you live more fulfilled by helping others, it's nearly impossible to be sad. It's nearly impossible to feel stuck in life. And it is a way for people to really feel alive again, feel connected again, and feel like they're living their purpose on this planet. And so that's the message that I continue to share from the stage.
I love that so much. So let me ask you this. From 2015, this is really kind of where this came from, the bucket list lifestyle. How has your life changed as a result of living in this new thinking process?
Well, it's changed in such a way that it's really finally me living in my authenticity. All the things that I did prior to this always had little bits and pieces where I was a speaker or a trainer. I'd help out in the businesses I had, or the few times I tried to work in corporate America. And my favorite part was always the speaking part, or the sharing part, or the teaching part. That was always my favorite part all the time. Now I get to do it, and I get to live the life that I speak about from the stage. So when I train speakers, I always talk about speaking from the place of authenticity, and that place where you do everything you can to be truly you on stage. And when you are truly you on stage, the audience will always resonate at the highest level. And that's what I get to do. I get to go on stage. I get to be me. And they know that I live that way because they can check any of my social media that I'm living exactly what I speak about on stage. I'm still doing it. And so now I get to always create more experiences, and I share stories. Just like today, we're sharing stories on the podcast, and you and I have shared stories when we connect and find out what each other has been doing over time. That's really what it's all about. And then also, in any way, whether it's a podcast or I help a speaker or I'm on stage and I inspire somebody, any possible way that I can impact a life, then it's really amazing. And yeah, speaking is amazing and pays very well. But I always say that the bank account number is a representation of the number of people I've helped along the way. And because of that, it's really just a scorekeeper. And so that's kind of how I calculate that in.
That's amazing. I couldn't agree more. And I just absolutely I love hearing this. I have 1,000 questions going through my head right now, but let me ask this. So, the average person, they work a full-time job. How could they utilize, your 3 tips right here of giving back to more people, of making, greater connections, and whatnot. And how can they fit this into the pockets of their life so that they can keep their job, which is the way that they're making money, but also create that more quality of life?
Well, first and foremost, everything that I am sharing is something that I share from the stage, and it's something I live by, as I mentioned. And it doesn't matter where I go, who I speak to, or what demographic, what age group, the same 4 things come up for people. First is time, and that's what you're talking about there. I don't have enough time. I don't know if I can fit this in. Next is money and financial. Third is responsibilities, like maybe they're taking care of their kids or they're taking care of an adult, or maybe they're still trying to take care of themselves, but they're responsible, like you said, responsible to jobs, responsible to community stuff where they live. And then the fourth is fear, and that fear is the thing that keeps them from doing stuff. So again, a lot of times when people say, I don't have the time, well, that's also coupled with fear. But the time just comes down to it. That's the easy out. It is the absolute easy out, just saying, I don't have the time. Because we always create time for the things we want to do. When something is a priority to us, we'll create the time. And sometimes you just have to say yes and let the how figure itself out later. So you don't have to know. You say yes, and then you just go do that thing. And it always works out. The timing part works out. You make it happen. And it's something that's super, super powerful. So I say, just say yes. Maybe it doesn't work for that very moment in time and space, but just look at your calendar and go, you know what? Okay, I got time here, and make it happen. And there hasn't been an experience that I've done that I've said yes to that I wish I hadn't said yes to. Now, I'm not saying that every experience is amazing. What I'm saying is every experience always gives me a great story or something I've learned from it.
I love that. Okay, so it sounds like you are always seeing the silver lining in things, even if it doesn't feel like the most ideal timing or the most ideal situation. Is that about right?
Well, I mean, I always say that we need to teach what we need to learn most. So I needed to be the one saying yes because I wasn't saying yes enough. And there's times even now that I'm challenged where I'm like, I don't know if I want to say yes because I'd rather just sit on the couch and finish this Netflix series. Okay, I'll say yes. And then I say yes, and then it happens, and it's amazing and awesome and wonderful. And then I come back and I finish the series.
Well, this is a great way to look at it. I absolutely love that answer. That is a great answer. Okay, what was my other question that I thought of? Okay, so now you do so much with speaking from stage, but let's say someone, they just want to be a little bit better at speaking to a friend or speaking on social media, for example. Do you have any tips for that?
Well, we know when we're speaking to friends, it's easy because we feel comfortable. What happens is when someone clicks that live button where, oh, I'm going to go to a Facebook Live or an Insta Live or even TikTok Live now, they start to get concerned about judgment. But the number one judgment's coming from their own head. And they're judging, oh, what if I say something wrong? Or what if I don't do it right? Or what if, I don't look right, or my hair's not right, or my face, or something in my teeth? What it comes down to is anybody who wants to, if you really, really want to speak on social media, just start. Just start. It's the same thing I think about when I knew I wanted to be a speaker and I had the message for the bucket list life, but I hadn't figured it all out yet. I didn't have the perfect slides. I still don't have the perfect slides. The thing with being a speaker, whether it's professionally or just with friends or just over social media, is it's an infinite game. You will never be the best. You will never, ever be the best, but you can be you. And when you're you and you're authentic, theoretically, you are the best, because that's all people want to see. They just want to see the true you. And so my recommendations for tips is just start. That's the first key. Try it out. It records. Look at it. Debrief it. Change it up for the next time. Change it up for the next time. Add something in. Take something out. See what's working for you. Talk more, talk less. Be more animated, be less animated. It's a process of just slowly giving each time you do it an opportunity to learn from it.
That's beautiful tips right there. I think I'm learning a lot just from hearing this, because I never go on Facebook Live. So thank you for that. I mean, I'm benefiting. I don't know if anyone else is, but I'm totally benefiting from this right now. Okay, so another question that I had that came up for me is what was your biggest fears of getting started in speaking, besides just starting? I know that was probably one of them, but was there any challenges that you had of, can I do this? Like, what do I need to do? What was that process like for you of where you were to how you made it into this and how you kept moving forward each day?
Well, similar to what I said about trying Facebook Lives or any type of social media, I did the same thing. It was a hit and miss when it came to speaking. I knew that I wanted to do it. I just needed the opportunity to get on stage. And as soon as I had a small event, I made $500 from my first paid speaking event. And while I had done many, many unpaid events or trainings prior to that, I needed an opportunity to get on stage with my message, the bucket list life, get paid for it, have an audience. There was about 175 high school kids. And if you wonder who's going to judge you the most, or you're going to have the most fear, it's, go stand on stage in front of a bunch of high school kids. That's the most challenging audience ever, but it's also one of my favorite audiences. And for me, and I look back at some of the slides that I'd chosen for the presentation. I look back at some of the music or the flow or the dynamics or even some of the things I said. I'm like, wow, that was really in compared to where I am now, it was very beginner. But the thing is I was more professional than 99% of the people in the audience. So that being the case, I was already able to teach them the message that I had. I went up there and had the most fun ever. And then and I recorded it. I just put a camera in the back of the room and I recorded it, and I went home and I said, okay, what would I change? Like, oh, I see how I stood in front of the screen there. I moved from this part of the stage to that part of the stage, or that joke did not work at all, especially with high school kids. That's gone. And I started to realize what I needed to change, and it evolved. And it was a little nerve-wracking, but the thing was, it's just like skydiving. Once you exit the plane, you're not nervous anymore. Once I got on stage, I was no longer nervous. I was in my element.
That's amazing. I mean, thinking about being on stage, usually people's biggest fear is public speaking, right? So, I mean, if you could give a tip right there about when you go on stage, or Facebook Live, for example, to not have that fear, to help dissipate it. Do you have a tip for that?
Yeah, let go of the data. Let go of the data. The reason people have that paralysis is because they're so concerned that it has to be perfect, that they have to say everything they've written down word for word, verbatim, and that everything just goes super smooth and the audience gives a standing ovation. then what happens is if there's any little glitch in what they've either practiced or they envision or what they have planned, they don't know what to do, and it throws them completely off. Even if that glitch is them just fumbling a sentence, and then they don't know how to recover, and then it's a snowball effect, and that's where they're like, oh my gosh, that did not go well at all. So when I say let go of the data, it means that if you have the basic concept, like I understand create more, share more, and live more, which is my basic concept, and my keynotes are never the same all the way through. They have the same framework. They have an opening, they have the same closing, they have the three main messages that are given in that order. But there are times at some audiences I say some things, and at other times I say different things. And sometimes it's just what's supposed to be for that particular audience. So I let go of the data. On top of that, I've had events where the power's gone out. I was at a high school where they had to evacuate the entire high school, and then we had to go back in and complete the presentation. And I just went with it. I just molded it into the presentation because that's just what it's about. There's nothing you can do, and it won't be perfect. But again, if you just go be you, then the audience will feel as if it's perfect.
You said something that actually right there at the end that I really want to ask about. If you just go be you. So a lot of people, I think sometimes they don't know who they are exactly, that maybe they wear different hats around different people, that maybe they think that they have to be perfect or super professional, or, they can't go on and cuss if they like to cuss passionately or things like that. How would you say someone knows if they're showing up authentically, and is there a fine line with public speaking, Facebook Lives, for example, where you need to have more professionalism? What would you say to that?
You take Gary Vee as an example, and a lot of people told him definitely don't cuss before going on stage or on stage. And he just chose to be him because that's who he was and that's who he is. And that's how he continues to do it. So he did it, and it's still people. And yeah, some people don't hire him, but he's got enough engagements right now and business that it doesn't matter. And I've seen other speakers, they've tried to be like Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins does swear. And I've seen other speakers try and emulate that, except I'm like, that's not you. You're not that person. Not that they're not Tony Robbins. They're just not that person that swears on a regular basis. And then they're trying to bring it into a presentation. I think ultimately who we are, this is something I train, is you should be the same person on stage as you are if we went to dinner after the event. So I should be able to see you on stage, and then we went to dinner after the event, and it's the same person. Not some alter ego, not somebody who's over the top on stage and then is recluse in person. It needs to be that 360-degree transparency, as if there was a camera on you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How you're showing up in life is how you show up on stage, and vice versa. And as people settle into their stage persona and they realize it's actually their own life persona, that's when all those fears go away, because they're not trying to be someone else. They're just them. And it's not scary to be you because that's who you are.
That's a great answer. I think that right there speaks to a lot of the people listening to this podcast right now, to just be that same person off stage as you are on stage. I know for me personally, that was something I had to try to find, that voice growing up, especially in your 20s, right? Like, you're not always sure who you are. So you have to try out a lot of different things. And I tried out this super serious, like, I'm so professional hat that I would wear. And I thought it was cool, but then I look back and I'm like, that's so boring, right? Like, no one can relate to that. So do you find that as you get older, you really start to embrace your authenticity more? Or would you say someone who wants to be a public speaker, who's maybe in their 20s, that how do they go about finding their voice if they're not even sure what that sounds like yet?
So there's three main areas when it comes to learning how to be a professional speaker. The first is messaging, the second is stagecraft, and the third is the business of speaking. And those three things together help any speaker at any age, at any part of their career, be as successful as they can be. So messaging is the number one thing, because a lot of people say, I do feel like I'm supposed to speak from stage. I do want to inspire others, but I don't know what my message is. And then they're kind of all over the place. It's one of the messaging problems where they have too many messages that they want to speak about. But the challenge is to find out what that particular thing is. And through messaging, the answer is through the stories of their life. What are the stories up until where they're at in life that will be powerful from the stage? And then those stories could potentially bring the title. Sometimes people have the title and then they find the stories from their life that add to that. Or we go into the exploratory phase of learning the stories of somebody's life, and then the title appears. And then that is part of the message there. But whether someone's 20, 40, or 60, it doesn't matter, because everybody has powerful stories in their life that they can pull from. Those stories that made us laugh the most, or those stories that were sad for us, or those stories where we had to learn a lot. And I mean, you take someone who maybe when they were 5 and they had to travel from another country to maybe the US, and they had to resettle, and they could explain the whole story of what their parents had to do and what they had to do and going to school and their challenges of going through high school. That's enough of a story to impact an entire audience, no matter what age group or demographic. Or someone who's lived to their 60, but they've got these little stories along the way, and then they did one big thing maybe in the last 5 years. Maybe they were the 55 or 60-year-old that summited Mount Everest, and what it took to do that. So again, it doesn't matter where we are in life. We just find the stories that make up who we are, and those stories told from stage share the message, and then we add in the learning parts to it, whatever that is: inspiration, motivation, leadership, team building, customer service, sales, whatever it is for that vertical, for that speaking from the stage. And then you've got a complete keynote right there.
I mean, here's what I love about the bucket list life is that by living the way that you speak and teach people how to live their life, they're literally creating all these stories.
That's exactly right. That's it.
So what I'm hearing is, don't sit on the couch and watch Netflix all day long. You got to get out there and live so that you have these stories to not only feel more full in your heart, but to be able to share that with other people. Is that about right?
Yeah. Now, if part of your storyline was, I sat on the couch and I watched all of Netflix until the end of Netflix, and Netflix actually said, you are the winner, you've completed Netflix. Okay, that's part of your storyline. But if that's the scenario where your natural thing is to do that, if you can't inspire yourself, how are you going to inspire and motivate an audience?
What is it that inspires you the most, do you think?
It changes by the day. It's sometimes inspiration comes from someone you know. Maybe, my kids inspire me one day, or my girlfriend inspires me. Or maybe it's hiking to the top of a mountain, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, this sunset inspires me. Sometimes it's sitting in an airport and seeing the way one person interacts with another that I don't know. But because I'm watching the interaction happen, I go, wow, look at that act of kindness there. Or look at how intent they are in sharing with whatever story they're talking about with each other, but they're both 100% present with each other. Or being inspired by someone who said yes to an experience, and then they're terrified to do it, but they do it anyway. That's another possibility. And so getting to celebrate them when they complete it, that's inspirational.
It's beautiful. That is so, so well said. Now you just talked about your kids and your girlfriend. So I want to ask this is how, um, your thinking and the way that you speak and whatnot from stage, how is this translated into your relationships, um, off stage? I know you talk relationships is a big part, but how have you seen that progressed since becoming a speaker?
Well, for sure, my connection with my kids is tremendously stronger. And that challenge there, even through my life when they were younger, I had a connection with them, but not like I do now. And so when I started being me, and I felt like I was me all the time, because before I was trying to be someone else, I was trying to go through corporate America, and I thought I need to make all this money, and I'll do it this way because that's the easier, fastest way, or the right way based on what I thought. And so I would come home and I wasn't me. Now the way I live my life is I'm always me all the time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And this year's 366 with our extra day, so a bonus day. And the deal is that I get to be me all the time. And so when I'm around them, I'm me. When I'm on stage, I'm me. And that makes it amazing. Now, my girlfriend challenges me in so many ways because she's someone who wants to experience everything, like everything. And there are on rare occasions where I just have to say no, or on some scenarios where it's been just a phenomenal weekend. And I'm thinking, wow, I had no idea you could do that many things in a weekend. But that's because I just kept saying yes. And then what happens is naturally is I start to come up with ideas to hopefully push her over the edge where she's like, all right, no, let's just slow down a little bit. That was a ridiculous weekend. So it's interesting to see that because I think we attract people into our lives who we need to challenge us and help us grow. And that's what relationships are about, and grow in those positive ways. And so the timing is absolutely perfect to be able to have that. And it's brilliant.
Okay. Without getting TMI, because this is just me. No TMI, Kenyon, keep it clean. What are some of the fun things that you guys have done? Right. So I'm sure there's a lot of people in relationships out there. What are some of these things that you guys are doing? I'm curious to know.
Well, both of us are adventurous in many different ways. I helped open the door to skydiving for her, so she started doing that. And then in the process, she got me back on a snowboard because I said I did professional snowboarding, but I hadn't done it since 2006. So all of a sudden now I have a pass again, and now I'm buying gear again, and now we're going to mountains and doing those types of things. But I think the most magical scenario was when I said, look, I'm going to be on stage in Sydney, Australia in front of 8,000 people. And I said, it'd be really amazing if you came along. And she absolutely said yes. But in that process, you see, originally, if I wasn't in the relationship, I would have gone to Sydney. I may have stayed an extra day or so and then flown home. But instead, it became this whole journey. And one of the things was that, okay, but we're in Australia and we're going to be there for 4 or 5 days. But that was it. And then we tacked on New Zealand for 4 nights. So the total trip was about 10, 11 or 12 days with travel. But the thing is, most people wouldn't add on New Zealand. They wouldn't say like, oh, I wouldn't go there unless I had more time. And then they never end up going there. But instead we said yes. And so we hit Sydney. We did all the things around Sydney. We climbed to the top of the bridge and looked over the whole harbor and the opera house. And we went to Bondi Beach. And of course the presentation, I had that in front of 8,000 people. And we had great dinners. And then we got on a plane and then we went to New Zealand and we rented a car and had 4 different nights in 4 different Airbnbs. And we went and we just looked like, what can we hit within driving, where every day we would drive, do an adventure, stay in an Airbnb, repeat. And so it was this process where the first night we woke up on this farm in this cabin on top of a hill and nobody around. And there's an outside tub and you can just sit in the tub and look over like just endless views of pasture and river and trees. And it was just totally gorgeous. Second day, glowworm caves and amazing adventure. Just look it up. Just New Zealand glowworm caves. Tremendous. And then we got to go see the Arch the 3rd day. And then we cruised all around Auckland on the 4th day. And then we got on a plane and went home. And still to this day, I packed more in those 10 days than most of the time where I would go internationally to anywhere else. because we were fueling off of each other in that process of like, what else can we do? How can we live our life to the fullest in these 10, 11 days?
That sounds amazing. Wow. I went to New Zealand with actually, I went there for an event that you would know about that was held in Australia in Sydney. But I went to New Zealand and we took a helicopter ride from over to Milford Sound. That was probably one of the most amazing sights I've ever seen. I still talk about that of being one of the most like beautiful sights I've ever seen in my life. And nobody could hear me, but I was in the helicopter and had my head things on, and I'm like, oh wow, oh my gosh, like just in my own total world, no one could hear me, but that's okay.
I remember seeing those photos on social media way back when. I remember how like just a big smile and like you were just like, this was amazing.
It was so much fun. I absolutely am ready to do some international traveling when it's time. That's totally going to happen. So, Kenyon, let me ask you this. So, when you're speaking, do you speak to, is it only corporate professionals? What is the audience that you speak to now these days?
So, most of the events that I get hired for are for corporate audiences. And they're for small audiences with 100 people, or sometimes with 1,000 people, or 8,000 people. The most common size for speaking events is the 300 to 500 range. And then there are all the big events after that. And of course, those are the crown jewels to be able to get those. Additionally, I like to give back, and I charge a very, very small fee, or sometimes free, to speak at high schools. Because I want to impact the kids and impact the youth that are coming up. I want them to feel inspired. And so whenever I have those opportunities to speak for school groups and or educators, anybody educating these kids, absolutely, I want to be able to impact those lives too. So I'll give a different type of price range for those, and that's how I give back. And then the corporations is the other side.
Okay. So I want to ask this is because you're speaking to people that kind of live a non-entrepreneurial life, right? It's kind of different when you change from an entrepreneur to a routine style kind of life. Now, when you're helping inspire them to live more, do you ever get asked, okay, well, I only have this amount of time and I only have this many vacation days. How do I live more in this small amount of time with this small amount of money?
Well, a lot of people think that living more means you're actually doing international travel, or you're going someplace, or it has to be this grand adventure. Living more really just comes down to sometimes the small things. Can you go for a walk? Can you spend an afternoon with your kids? Can you go, like, I'll challenge anybody that it's listening to this right now. What would be the thing that you would recommend for somebody to do that came to visit you? How many times have you visited somebody and they're like, we should go do this thing in their town? And they're like, I've never done this. I've never done that thing in this town. Like, wait a minute. It's the thing that everybody goes to see or do or experience, but you live here? And that's because everybody thinks they'll go tomorrow. Everybody thinks they have a tomorrow. Everybody thinks that there's another opportunity because they live there, they'll just go tomorrow. It's like people that live in ski towns and they never go skiing. Or people that live near beautiful mountains and they never go hiking. Just go for a walk in the mountains. And that's that little thing. And then they're having those experiences and they're feeling alive.
I love hearing that. As you know, I live in Las Vegas, and you have come here. Back in the day, you guys had taken some trips here, and I think when you came, you had probably done more things than I had done while living here, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Now when I travel, and that's one of the bonuses I get, anytime I go to an event, whatever city it is, me and my director of content, we take a look at what are the things that people do in that city. So, for example, we had an event north of St. Louis, and we went to the event in Illinois, came back to St. Louis, and in St. Louis, there's this thing called City Museum. I had no idea, but I looked at it. I went online. I was like, oh my gosh, we have to go to this place. It is an indoor playground for all ages. There's tunnels, there's slides, there's just all kinds of things, and they're always building and adding onto it. Just look up City Museum St. Louis. It's a one-of-a-kind place in the world. There's no other place like this. And we went, and it was amazing. And I laughed so hard. I had so much fun. And again, it's just, there are a lot of speakers, as an example, that fly to an event, they do the event, they stay in their hotel room, they get back on an airplane, and they go to their next event or they go home. And I'm like, wait a minute, someone's paying me to go to this city. I'm going to at least do one or two things of that opportunity. And if I have a whole day, I'll hit up 5 or 6 different things.
That's, can I put your shoes on for a day?
Yes.
You can do some of this fun stuff. This is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Okay. So a few more questions that I have. So one thing I just want to ask is, wow, I gotta check out this glowworm caves. I wrote it down so I don't forget. Okay. So you have this speaker program. Can you tell me a little bit about what this speaker program entails?
Yes, absolutely. So for me, as I continue to travel, and I am going to continue to be on the stage and impact as many lives as possible, I realized that I can only impact so many lives. And there were a lot of people that were coming to me saying, I have a message, I have a story, I have something I want to share. And to me, what was powerful was that if I helped that person, their message is just as powerful as mine, and they can go on stage and they can impact people in different ways than my storyline, but it's still making an impact. So I realized that I had the opportunity to exponentially affect more lives by helping speakers in 3 areas: helping them understand their message, helping them with the stagecraft so that they could deliver that message correctly, and helping them with the business of speaking so that they could get more stages, bigger audiences, more people to impact. Those 3 simple things can help change one person's life who wants to be a speaker, but will also change the thousands of people that they will be in front of. And so my team and I that helped build my speaking career, because I started at $500 for my first engagement, I thought that was amazing. And I moved to the 5-figure engagements where I'm at now. So the pay is wonderful because it's not quantity, it's quality. But then I realized that, hey, let's take the team and let's also build this speaker training, Kenyon Salo speaker training. And we designed an entire online system, but that also includes personal one-on-one coaching, group coaching. And we wanted to do it in such a way that people could get into the course and have lifetime access to it. And what do I mean by lifetime access? It's not a pay for a lifetime. It's a one payment, and for the rest of your life, every single time we add new content, that speaker would have access to it. So anytime I learn something new in the industry, add it to the site, and they have that opportunity there. And that became super, super driving force behind how we were going to do it.
How do you manage creating this program as well as building your own speaker platform?
Well, they're both happening at the same time. And one of the things I realized in speaking industry was to always get everything filmed. So I had a director of content, Kyler, he travels with me. And then we started using what I was saying from the stage as content and material. And then realizing that we could train while it was happening, or we could talk, or I could just jump on an empty stage and share a message, or of course in this office that I have here, and we could train there. But it's all about the pockets. The one thing about speaking is you're not always on stage. It's not 5 days a week, or it can be. There are speakers that do 180 speaking engagements a year. That's not me. I definitely don't want to do that. But some speakers love that. So I have a scenario where I'm on stage, and that's when I'm working on my speaking, craft. And then when I'm off stage, that's when I'm helping others work on their speaking craft.
I love it. I love it. Always a servant heart. You're always helping others. That's such an amazing thing. Kenyon, you are so wonderful. How can people find you if they want to connect with you outside of here?
Absolutely. I want to connect with anybody and everybody at Kenyon Salo on all social media platforms. And if you're at all curious, if you feel like, hey, I've always believed that I have a message to share, then, of course, I impress upon you to say yes. Let the how figure itself out later. And what does the yes mean? It means going to kenyonsalo.com, click on the training button. You'll see it there. Fill out the form. Let's just jump on a free 30-minute call. I want to hear about your story. Let's chat about where you're at. And I believe that there is an opportunity to impact more lives. So I would be super amazed to have anybody and everybody just reach out to me in any way that they'd like.
Yes, you guys definitely take Kenyon up on that offer. And I know that we will have a little special offer for you. You'll see it in the show notes. So definitely reach out to him. He's just an incredible human being that I can't even speak enough to. Okay, Kenyon, last question. What is your definition of living a committed lifestyle?
My definition of living a committed lifestyle, in absolute authenticity to this call, is basically being committed to yourself. There are so many people that are committing to other people and their belief of what their lifestyle would be, their belief of what type of job they should be or whether they should be within their job, and maybe even friends and family that are really impressing upon them to be something, and they forget to commit to themselves. So I will say what I've been doing my entire life is living a committed lifestyle by doing me, by authentically being me. And whenever I deviated from that path, I can look back now and go, those were the hardest times for me. And whenever I stay on that path, that's when it's easy and fun and amazing. So commit to yourself, because that's the most important thing. You got one life.
Oh, it's like a boom. That was a mic drop right there. I dropped my mic if I could, but then you guys couldn't hear me. Kenyon, great answer. You guys, this was absolutely amazing. Please definitely go connect with Kenyon. He is truly an extraordinary human being. And also make sure you check out the glowworm caves in New Zealand and City Museum, St. Louis. I got to go check that out. Kenyon, thank you so much for your time. This has been such a pleasure. I am so grateful for you. And you guys, until the next time, just like I always say, you only have one life to live. Make it amazing.